Okay. Mm, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it should be fine. Um, okay. So the methodology. Mm, uh, well, through the years, um, so methodology. By methodology, I mean how is there a criteria on how to put together, not as a production process, we'll get to that, but how to design, which are the dimensions we need to consider when designing applied games. Well, one of the things I think that people that gets people into applied games is is um, is and this seeing this relationship between playing, learning the game, and so playing harder stuff and getting better at the game, and the game evolving with you and getting harder to play. And in a sense, so this for me was showed me like an analogy between playing and learning. Okay, so with an interactive environment that somehow tests your skills, and as your skills grow, gives you more harder topics and more in-depth information. So this looks like a key that can guide you in the process of so a key for building a game that can teach. Okay, and actually, what I understood through time that this is not sufficient. This is only one possible dimension. Also, because many players are not competitive, are not interested in beating the game. They may be interested in building stuff through the game. They may be interested in living a story in the game, and are not very interested in just beating the game. So that's something you have to take very seriously when you're doing applied games, or even more persuasive applications in museums and things like this. Okay, so I thought, in fact, for me, what is really crucial and central to the methodology is what is called, what I found the researchers brilliantly created a term, which is diegetic connectivity, and they somehow try to schematize in this task between mechanics, game mechanics, in-story tasks. Somehow, all these dimensions make them connected to the theme of the game. So what do I mean by these very confused remarks? The fact that everything that is in the game, from the icons to the movement of the characters, or the elements in the backgrounds, and everything is somehow connected to the theme that you're dealing with. Like, for example, in our Opera Kids, it's a kids museum, kids application for museums. Now every element that we built in there, like from the icons to the interaction, we have to compose art. You have to go and search them in the museum, mapping it to your tablet application. Everything there is strictly connected to the museum theme and the museum art pieces. It's not that art is in the background, not that art is after, before, or just in between, though that is important too. But it's really inside, built inside the game mechanics, in the game story, every dimension of the game. is connected to the theme that you're dealing with. And yeah, so link the theme along all dimensions of the game. And another example, though only works in very few cases, is when you're designing games with physics. So like this is good designers do this instinctually, so that everything is somehow visible, okay, visible, and somehow visible through instead of having like names and numbers. So remove all the numbers in the game. How can you represent them? Why don't you represent everything that happens, all the metrics, through something that is in the theme of the game? So this will give also a sensation of depth. Of course, don't confuse this with skeuomorphism, but I don't want to go too much into detail with that. You can look it up. Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the dimension of learning, because of course applied games are there to teach you something. So and it's so we've seen this scheme, but it turns out that dealing with learning is much harder than we thought. So this scheme does not represent a sufficiently good enough representation of what is happening. So okay, so we have to get more depth about learning. So I'll have to suspend this for. Okay, sorry. So where was I? So yes, so it may seem easy that to link playing and learning through this scheme, and also but it isn't. And game designers are well aware of that. We know, and there's a sort of tradition of video games which are very boring and not effective. And also school teachers know that. But while it is so many expert game designers will tell you that fun is overrated, in the sense that worry about the mechanics and the details and fun will come out of that. Learning is not, in the sense, if you don't do an explicit research and curation for the learning aspect of your game, you will not be effective. And there's a famous book on this theme, and which is Koster, A Theory of Fun, where he wonderfully presents the theme of the analogy that he tries to explain and show that fun actually is learning. Okay, and so when one sees this and reads this wonderful book, one thinks that he or she has understood how to make. I mean, if learning is fun and a game is fun, then people are learning something through the game, which in a sense is true. The problem is what they're learning, whether they're learning something relevant or not. And so there's a wonderful research which I linked in the following slide, about the fact that what Koster says is not like the end of the research, it is the start of the research. And this girl, she researched some wonderful research about how the learning process in game has somehow to be a cyclical process where also there's somehow the emotional aspect of the learning process is very important. But still, I think that does not cover all the dimensions of learning, as she's perfectly aware, of course. and she gives this sort of definition. Fun is a cognitive mechanical process through which we convert fear into happiness through surprise, and so we're gaining some clarity of the how can a game can teach. Well, in my opinion, if a game has to be something that can be taken seriously as a learning tool, as a learning process, these are some of the features that it should satisfy. But and here are the links to the original talk. But I don't think that this gives you a complete solution. So I think if you should ask yourself and do a research on the fact why your game does not teach. One thing I can tell you, a hint I can tell you about this, is that you should probably make somehow the teaching process not monodimensional. That because of the variety of contexts and people that will approach your game, you have to take many opportunities to teach and to inform about the topic at hand. And in fact, this is the fact of approaching the same topic in different ways is one of the key ways in which people learn stuff. In fact, I would suggest you that as main reference for using games for learning, I wouldn't encourage you to study as much game design as study what teachers have to say. And they can say they have some really interesting experience about this. And I will give you here, sorry, because I'm gonna close this stream soon. This reference, Teach Like a Champion, is a wonderful book about effective ways to teach. And I think that each of the techniques that he presents there can be something where a game designer doing games for learning can learn about and can use games as a very interesting and very powerful and flexible medium to teach stuff. Okay, I think that's enough for my streaming on this theme today, and here's soon.